Compelled you to, accept the invitation here today?
So I participated in the first meeting of the network back in November in London, and it was a very interesting exercise because the level of expertise in the room was really high, but not only of people doing open government / open data stuff, but also people that are topic experts in other different domain areas. And this multidisciplinarity that we had in the room, and now here being multiplied by 2 or 3, in the number of people, it's what brought me here more than anything else.
So then you've been working in the open, big data, open data space for quite a while now.
Yeah.
What are kind of the solutions that you've been exploring in your work?
So most of the time I've been working on the side of governments, advising them on how they should publish open data and how they should engage with the citizens. So most of the time it's a matter of, first you need to raise awareness about this topic because in many places it's something quite new yet. So they don't know much about it and they don't know how it can be useful for them. And in the second place, they ask you always questions about how they should do it. What is the best way? How should I do open data or open government well to engage with my citizens in the best possible way? So it's typically, we do a lot of work on, if you want, matchmaking between the supply side, being the government releasing staff, and the people outside government, in the end, the regular citizens that will, use that data for their own benefit and purposes.
Mm. And you've been here for most of the day, right? You went through the sessions today. You heard a lot of different views. What are some of the insights that you found compelling? And, what would you maybe like more of?
I think the interesting thing that started to happen at the first meeting, and I'm seeing more of now, is that we are starting, I don't know if this is how to call this, probably a second wave of open government, where the focus is not on pushing the government to do the right thing or to release stuff, as I said before, but more on trying to focus the demand on how we can identify the real problems that citizens have, how we can engage them in a way on which government can be helpful for them, for achieving or improving their lives, for example. So we are seeing, I think, more here than we saw in November, because probably we are more people, more sessions, more topics, but also because I think the program, project, whatever you want to call it, is evolving also in this direction. And I think that is a good thing. And I hope that it will deliver the best results in a few months' time. What I would like to see more of, but this is just probably because of my work, I typically work in the developing world more than anything else. And something that happened also at the previous meeting is that it's quite US/UK, if you want, focused, which is okay. But most of the solutions that we are debating here are frankly not applicable in the developing world. Mm. So we need to be, in my work, I work a lot on inclusiveness. And this is something that is not also related to what we call the global south, all these countries in Latin America, Africa, and Asia, but also is applicable to rural areas, even here in the US. So how we can engage with people that have no clue about how this works. Imagine, people that have no connectivity or illiterate people, how we can engage with them so they don't lose this bandwagon. So that's something that I think we should expand a little bit more over the next few meetings, if possible.
Initially, right, I think that the smaller countries have more of an opportunity to change and be more open and utilize these data sets. Is that true, or?
I think it's not, the size of the country is not that important, frankly. It's probably a number of things that we have discovered that have something to do with what we want to achieve. For example, you need a certain level of connectivity. I mean, in terms of open data, I'm hearing that, every single time that I give a public talk, it wouldn't exist without the web. Because in the first place, it has to be in an exploring form, people have to get access to it easily, etc. So I don't see that happening in a paper-based world at all. So it's more about researching what are the variables that are important for this to be achievable, if you want. So there is a baseline somewhere where there is a minimum, let's say, infrastructure on literacy levels, etc. And in these countries, that I said before, and in other areas, it's difficult to achieve. So I think it's not related to the size of the country, but more to how these 2 or 3 components that are essential get to that baseline that I said before.
So One of the areas that we're trying to develop, and you know this already, right, is the research field. What are the questions that we can kind of ask? What do you think are areas that we can explore, or rather questions that we can be asking to broaden this research field, to broaden our ability to develop a language about open government?
That's a very good question. And difficult to answer. I mean, one of the things that no, it's difficult to answer. I mean, one of the things that we are doing, and we are just focusing in a very small area, is on assessing impact. So, for example, we have a big project that we have just started in 14 countries with 17 different organizations and partners in the field on trying to assess what we call the emerging impacts of open data. We're calling that emerging because we really don't know yet what the impact is or how it looks like, frankly. Most of the time, even people like myself who are advocates of this thing, it's very difficult for us to show evidence on why this is beneficial. In fact, out of these 17 different case studies that we are commissioning right now, we expect that some of them will find failures all along the way and will be very informative on how we can approach these initiatives in a different way so to avoid failure. But right now it's very difficult. The evidence base is growing a little bit, but we have just anecdotal evidence. We have examples, especially here in the US and in the Western world in general. At the local level, state level, national, federal or national level, we have examples. But we don't have yet systematic evidence to say, look, this is the best way you can do to achieve X. And one, straightforward example is the open data portals, the data.gov websites. Do we know as of today that that is the best way to publish open data from a government point of view? We don't. So what happened is that when that happened here in the US, happened in the UK, then something like, 300 different governments all over the world did the same thing, because they were following suit. But nobody knows, not even here in the US, if that is the wisest thing to do, and that is something that will achieve a greater impact. So I think that small bit alone, which is quite focused, is quite complicated and important to look at.
You mentioned some of the case studies and some of the things that you're not sure of how they're going to. Can you describe just one of the case studies that you guys are working on?
Yeah. So as I said, we have many. So for example, there is a case study across 3 different countries in Latin America that is trying to compare whether or not implementing open data approaches in the judiciary systems of those countries will deliver best results for the judges themselves and also for the citizens. There are broader cases on budgetary data, for example, on whether or not is it enough to make the data public and on an exercise of transparency on the side of the government, and if that is enough to foster action on the citizen side. We don't know just yet. Specifically in this context, for example, this is a case in Kenya, or another case in Brazil that is more or less the same thing. We don't know just yet. It's too soon in the process, and in fact, we don't even know if that can be considered open data, frankly. So if you go to some of these places, you will see that there is no portal, that the definition of open data by the letter is not being followed, frankly. So what we have in there is more, information, if you want, and some data that some people are getting out of the government, sometimes because they are lucky or they have good contacts one-to-one with persons in government. So we need to explore more of that and see if that will have an impact, either, as I said before, either positive or negative. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, anything that happens, it's a learning experience, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the experiments is what is happening here today. What we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, some of us said, oh, this is an experiment. Experiments can fail. But it's okay. We can learn from failure. It's not a problem.
Yeah. Let's see here. So I guess my last question then is, if experiments can fail sometimes, that means when you do them again, you change them up again, and you do them a different way to ideally do it better. One of the things you said was that you'd like for more discussion on the emerging countries, or on not the superpower countries, right? Yep. What are some other things that in the next experiment that we could cover, or that we could have certain outputs from the next experiment that would make it a little bit more beneficial for you?
I don't know yet. We will need to see what happens tomorrow. I mean, so far it's been, as I said, pretty interesting, and the topic areas that have been selected have been very, very, very nice ones. And it's been quite a surprise for us, at least for me personally, as a participant. We didn't have a very clear agenda. We were not sure what was going to happen upon arrival. And so far, I think that was worrying at the beginning. Like, you are always, ready 1-2 weeks in advance. You prepare your stuff, whatever. And here was like, oh Jesus, what I'm gonna do? I have no clue. And I think it sort of worked. So I would probably suggest to repeat it again. I mean, the format is quite good. And I don't know if more targeted agenda would help. Frankly, I don't know, because what we did last time in London was more or less along these lines. We were not sure either about what was going to happen, and I think that in both times worked. So as of today, at least, I don't have a very clear recommendation on something that should be changed. Besides
so you like the organic approach that was happening in the breakout sessions today?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a good one, frankly.
Cool. Well, Jose, thank you so much. That was great.
My pleasure.